Well, hi everybody. Welcome to GW Center for Integrative Medicine YouTube channel. Today we have a special pleasure of having Aaron Daniels with us. He's one of our ReCODE program participants, and we decided to just talk. We decided to talk about the program, the struggles, the benefits, all of it. And Aaron's been one of the most vocal participants of not just the individual program, so seeing me and other practitioners, but also our weekly group.
Hmm.
And he was so grateful to decide to join me today. I'm Dr. Kogan, co-host of the channel and medical director of the center. Aaron, tell us about yourself a little bit.
Sure. Well, I'm a lifelong DC resident. I was actually born at GW, and I've lived here pretty much my whole life. I had a very good, successful um, career as a CFO, and the success was great, but also had some downsides as it's a very stressful job. And I retired in 2016.
Mhm. So, when did you join our clinic?
Our first meeting was April 13th in 2023. I remember
So,
that date.
so it's been a little bit more than that. Well, it's been a year and a half, really.
Right,
And you joined it straight for the memory program, for the ReCODE reversal of cognitive decline program. So,
right.
what prompted you to come?
Well, my wife and I are both, retired executives, and we are, we've learned to be very action, uh, focused. So when the diagnosis came in formally in March of 2023, uh, my wife, who is a researcher, was reading a lot of stuff, and we read about the Bredesen protocol and
Mhm.
code. And we looked at it, and we thought this is something that we should look into and participate in. And I'm very happy that I did that. It's been a great experience, and not without challenges, of course. Um, Alzheimer's is a challenge.
So before we actually talk about this, if you're comfortable with this, and by the way, this is very personal. We're so grateful and thankful that you come because it takes a certain courage to talk about this publicly, and this is your personal medical condition. I just want to acknowledge to everybody how not easy it is, and so we really appreciate this. And again, if there's any point at which you feel you don't want to go there, just don't go there. It's fine. It's
Sure,
expected.
sure.
So
And
what happened? Why did the diagnosis of Alzheimer got established? What was going on with you before the diagnosis?
short version is that I started having some language speech issues, and I detected that, I would say, in late 2021. And
Mhm.
in 2022, we went to our um, GP, and we did an MRI and a CT, and we looked at all of my medicines, and by the time we got to Thanksgiving of 2023, at Thanksgiving, I said something that was completely out of context.
Mhm.
Um, and that, so we kind of used that as our, you know, first mile marker.
Mhm.
Now, in hindsight, uh, I go back to a few years earlier when I can now detect that I was having some issues then, even though I didn't know it.
Mhm.
Um, so uh, so it's very it was very difficult, and we were diagnosed in March of 2023, as I said.
Mhm.
Hmm.
So since the diagnosis has been about a year and a half, how are you doing?
I my perspective is that I'm very stable. I can't say I've reversed or gotten super worse, but I
Hmm.
will say this, for me, in my experience, there's an ebb and flow. If I if I'm stressed and don't have enough sleep and haven't had enough exercise, and maybe I wasn't following the diet, any combination of those can kind of throw me off, and my language will flare up. And that's the term that we use. There's a
Hmm.
flare up, and then when that happens, we go double down on all of everything that we're doing to try to make sure that we're optimizing the environment.
Hmm. Right, right, right. So since you joined our program, tell our listeners a little bit about what do you find. Let's talk first about what do you find good? Like, what do you find helpful? What do you find that basically made you stay stable? In terms of like overall testing, you are stable. I mean, we've been running multiple tests, and you came very, very early, so your deficits are minimal, if any, in terms of just running tests, right? If
Right,
we run tests on you, you score quite good.
right,
But of course, it's the tests are not designed to pick up very subtle abnormalities unless you do very specialized comprehensive tests, which may take hours. But on a kind of a gross standard test that are done in the clinic, you score pretty well all in all.
right.
But tell us sort of what you think made it good for you in the program.
Well, there are certain things that I tend to go towards. Exercise would be one.
Mm-hmm.
And but putting together exercise and diet and sleep, just if I isolate those elements, I think those really, really help me.
Mm-hmm.
And in terms of the experience, I'm very strict on my supplements, and I think supplementation is really good because you get a lot of testing, and it tells you what your body is doing well and what your body is not doing well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and a little bit of history. I had a heart attack at age 42, and that was turns out to be a blessing because it made me very, very conscious of what my body is doing. And so I detected this. And so I think exercise, sleep, and diet really has been very, very helpful. I would also say um, brain HQ and light therapy, those two things are critical because if I have a flare up, as I described uh, previously, if I have a flare up, if I work hard on exercise and diet and the brain stimulation, brain HQ and light therapy, I can tell that it helps me with my aphasia, which is the language challenge.
Yeah, so you never had a very common presentation, right? So your memory, better than average in a sense. I mean, most people, when they come with this condition first, their first problem is memory. It's not necessarily the speaking. I mean, I think anybody who listens to you will realize that there's a little bit of a speech delay, even though you're completely fluent, but the speech comes in a slightly different manner that we would expect, especially since you've been on top of the business world for many, many decades.
Yes.
So, despite all that, and the fact that you maintain all this, I think you basically you so attuned to what's going on with you because you spent decades learning how to do it previously. And I agree. Sometimes the illness silver lining is you learn how to be better when something else majorly happens.
Right.
Um, and because of that, I think you came really, really early. Unfortunately, we often see situations where patients are sort of presenting with much more progressed situation, and it's much harder to treat at that point. So I think
Right.
kudos to you and your wife that you guys said, wait a second, that's not normal. We need to move a lot faster. And, you basically started the program within weeks after the diagnosis was established. So I think that's a very, very important point.
Right.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the group. I know you've been a very strong participant in our weekly group. That's led by Sally, who's our case manager, social worker, and she sort of helps with all things related to cognitive help, cognitive training, with just psychological support, with stress, all those things.
Right.
How's the group going for you?
Um, the group is great. I think we've all connected in a very close way. And that is very, very helpful. I mean, Alzheimer's can be different for every patient, different challenges, but we seem to um, very easily sync up and support. Um, One thing I'm hoping for is that we can make that group larger, so large maybe that we split off the caregiver partners, if that's what everyone,
Which
if that,
which we're trying to do. We're already
right, right,
starting to do that.
right. I do have one comment on the support group,
Mhm.
and it's just a matter of opportunity. Uh, there are not that many early onset folks. We have a very diverse
Mhm.
age range. Um, and even when um, my mother-in-law is at a memory um, organization, and we've talked to them quite a bit, and they don't have too many early onsets with them. And
Yeah.
it would be kind of good to share. We do have some connections on social media with people that are early onset,
Mhm.
and our conversations with them is helpful. But the support group that Sally runs is really important to all of us.
Yeah, I think the issue is, we never denied patients access to the program based on advancement of the illness. To me, it always felt like an ethical dilemma. Like actually, if you look at the Bredesen work, they discourage people with more advanced forms to join. Um,
Mhm.
they don't block it, but there's a sense of
Right.
you're not going to expect any benefit here, which I completely agree. There's this idea of point of no return beyond which anything don't expect reversal and you don't expect uh, arrest of progression. You just expect slowing down of progression, basically. And so I think there's some idea that let's not waste time if you're really advanced. I kind of disagree with that, but that's me as a geriatrician because I have seen patients with very advanced forms almost completely arresting, not reversing. I've never seen that, but they basically just live for many years despite very advanced disease. So I think based on that, we don't deny entry. And I think you're absolutely right from simply logistical perspective, we don't have a choice. I mean, we don't have enough patients to split up into three groups and do like early,
Right.
moderate, and advanced. But I think as we grow, I mean, we have grown substantially in the last couple of years. So we're probably going to get at some point to that point where we can say, okay, let's just do Tuesday night only for the early because I think your needs are different. I agree completely.
I think there's benefit in having the mixed to look at the glass half full.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Being able to support someone and helping them. And I've had some of my peers in the group reach out and ask questions and things like that. And I've done the same with them, asking them questions. And I think that's a very powerful thing when you think about support. And I think that that helps you. It may not, you know, change anything in terms of your progression, but it certainly makes you feel good, and I think that's a good thing.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, a lot of this is still uncharted territory, right? This is all brand new. I mean, there are very few places in the country that do anything like this. Let's talk about hard stuff, right? So I know I want to start with the mold and sort of how mold toxicity and exposure relates to what's going on with you. I know you struggle quite a bit getting out of the mold, cleaning up the place, and you also been very vocal group participants about the importance of it. So just tell our listeners a little bit about that. Like, so how does this been discovered and what you've done through the
Sure.
last year or so?
Um, so there were some notions that I have mold toxicity in some of the initial testing. And then from there, as we went deeper into biomarkers, uh, we realized that there's a lot of inflammation for me, and likely, regardless of the source, if it was mold or something else, certainly having inflammation at that level was not good for me. And so we tested, we had our primary residence, and we have a very small cottage in at the beach, and we tested them. They both had mold that was above a safe level for someone with my inflammation. And so we tried to remediate both houses, and they did get healthier, but not healthy enough for me.
Hmm.
In terms of that whole process, well, the thing that resulted from that is we decided I had to get out of exposure and out of my primary residence, and probably at the end we will be in a different house, and those other two houses will be gone, and which is very hard to deal with. I mean, very stressful. Um, it's a very hard project to get rid of mold. Uh,
Hmm.
uh, Identifying sources and remediating. Very, very difficult.
Well, I wanted people to hear this, and I wanted to hear them tell us this story with this degree of frustration in the voice. I think it's really important because you went through this firsthand, and it's not just all finances, it's just hard. For a lot of people, home has tremendous sentimental value. There's a lot of memories. It's often nearly impossible for some people to let go, even when it's obvious that the house cannot be saved. It's a very poorly understood topic altogether. There's a lot of regular practitioners, regular doctors who really don't understand it. They just don't get it. And they get very upset at our team for suggesting to our patients that they need to leave the house, that it's not fixable. Only some molded houses can be remediated. Some absolutely cannot because simply it's just too big of a project and it doesn't make sense from financial reasons. Only about 10 to 15% of population will actually get this inflammatory response and are at risk to develop neurocognitive or Alzheimer's disease from the mold toxicity. So it's sort of not clear how much it could be a lot easier to just move out. So I just want to highlight that importance. And thank you for sharing that.
Well,
But you are stable. And I want to do sort of come back to the positive here. You're stable. In fact, some of the testing actually showed slight improvements. So, when you came in, some of a more refined testing, not the MOCA test. MOCA test is a bit inaccurate, but the BOCA test, which is a better test, you've started at 28 and you're at 29:30 routinely now. So there's a little bit of an improvement, although both would be considered normal by all standards. So On a bright note, since you're a little bit better, what do you think? How do you want a future to look here? Not just in terms of the program, but also in terms of your individual journey.
Yeah, that's a tough question,
Sure.
Doctor. Um, we are a very determined people.
Hmm.
So I will fight as long as I can, and I'll have to just um, see how it goes, and if things go worse, we'll double down. Um, the fear of the future is something that I generally try not to focus on. Um, the first 6 months or maybe even more, very difficult to to uh, to take it all in and to acknowledge that this is the way it is. And so we will just keep going. That's what we do.
Well, I just want to highlight how much courage it takes to say these words and realize that ultimately there is no concrete data on this program. There is a currently randomized controlled trial in the workings, and we had a small trial before. We have our own internal data at our clinic suggesting that I think the future is good, and I think you can stay the way you are for decades. And we believe that. But ultimately, we don't know. I mean, there is this tremendous amount of uncertainty and fear of unknown going forward. And so it takes a lot of courage for you to say these words and sort of face things.
Yeah.
I will say that I'm very optimistic, and not only because I have seen things and we're continuously seeing things, but also because every day there are new developments. There are new medications, there are new supplements, there are new treatments. I think we're very hopeful for 40 hertz. We do think it doesn't work very quickly. I know you've been doing the 40 hertz sound and light therapy. I think we're also gonna see other things like red light to get more standardized and more included. So I want to end on an optimistic note, not on a pessimistic note.
Okay. Good.
And I think what we'll do is, how about this? How about in a couple of years, we'll bring you back. And so you can basically, we can talk about the same thing. And then
Sure.
the importance is here, just so that everybody understand, a year and a half into illness with a formal diagnosis, with everything confirmed, with all the markers, with the MRI, everything is confirming the diagnosis. You should have been a whole lot worse. I mean, there is no expectation that in a year and a half there is this level of stability and slight improvement. Usually you would have lost 1 or 2 points, if not 3 points, on the standardized testings. So the BOCA should have been around 25, 24 by now, but yet it's at 30. So I'm optimistic. I'm hopeful. I understand that it's fearful, and thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for having this courage and for being open and coming on and talking to us. Thank you
Okay.
so much.
Yeah, thank you for having me.